You know her and you love her, and she's probably the person you turn to when you need to know what's going on with Mother Nature. Longtime host on the Weather Network, Kim McDonald is not only an accomplished broadcaster, but an ambassador for the Breast Cancer Society of Canada. Now, ahead of Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, Kim joins me to share her remarkable journey and battle. How are you, Kim?
I'm fine. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. Now, before we get into your latest news because it's pretty spectacular, can you first take us back to 2016 and just share your journey and all the hurdles you've overcome since then?
Wow. Yes. And the funny thing is, even though it is 5 years ago, it is all still very clear in my mind. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer on December the 1st, 2016. And for most of 2017, I was dealing with all that goes with breast cancer. So I had 8 rounds of chemotherapy. I had bilateral mastectomy, and I had 25 rounds of radiation. So that was 5 days a week for 5 weeks through the summer. And then I had a really spectacular drug. I like all the drugs are good, but this one is really good. It's called Herceptin. And I had 18 fusions of Herceptin. And basically, that is a drug that wasn't around more than about 20 years ago. And because it was discovered for people with my specific diagnosis, I am alive and well 5 years later. But if I had been diagnosed before the year 2000, that would likely not be the case. I had a very aggressive breast cancer, and everything worked very well for me. So I had a complete response to chemotherapy. The Herceptin worked well, and thankfully, I had a great team.
Yeah, and there's so much that goes into, cancer treatment, and it's a lot. And when looking back on it, I'm sure it's just been such a journey. I feel like it must feel like a dream to you now.
Yeah, it does. I would say it's a nightmare, but if that's not 100% true, because as difficult as it is to go through breast cancer treatment, a lot of really powerful, positive things happened to me along the way. And those are the things that I was not expecting. So, because I went public with my diagnosis and told people my story, I wrote a blog, I was on a radio show, I shaved my head live on Facebook. I did all of these things in a way to educate people because I was just learning myself. I didn't really know what I was doing. And so this is my small way of having any kind of control over the situation. And I had so much support because of it, but that really wasn't the thing. It wasn't the people who were propping me up, which really basically held me through the entire thing. And am forever in debt to the people who did that for me. But it's the people that reached out and said that I was helping them because they were going through the same thing, and they couldn't talk about it, or they didn't know how to explain it to their children or their spouses. And there I was just talking about it freely so they could use my voice to kind of explain what they were going through. So there was this connection with people that I had not anticipated. And I think I gave a lot of people a lot of hope because of how things were going for me.
Yes, you definitely did, and that is definitely what people need when they're going through that. And going off of that, I'm sure as much as you want to stay positive, it's so much easier said than done. So what are some of the other major things that got you through this time?
Yeah, it is hard to stay positive. I tried to have control over my attitude because that's basically all you've got. Everything happens to people, good and bad, as we know. It doesn't have to be a cancer diagnosis, it can be something else. And you may not have control over that, but how you face it, how you look at it, how you can turn things around if you can, that's how you get through it. And I'm telling you, I could not do it alone. I had friends and family and strangers send me cards every week. I'd have a bouquet of flowers, and right when it was about to die, another bouquet of flowers would show up from somebody completely different. And sometimes it would happen on a day that I was really down, and something would happen. Someone would send me a message, or somebody would send me something and tell me that, they loved me or they were thinking about me, and my day would turn around. So honestly, I relied so heavily on my community, and they really lifted me up. This is what I want to tell people, is that if you have breast cancer, please don't keep it to yourself. And please don't just tell one person. I know people are very private, but if you only rely on one friend or one spouse or your mother, that person is carrying so much burden. But if you open it up and let each person carry a little bit for you, then it's not too much for one person.
I feel like you just answered my next question because I was going to ask you if you had any advice to offer to someone battling a diagnosis, be it the patient themselves or a loved one. What else would you say?
Yeah, I have a lot. I have a lot of advice. Actually, read my blog. That would be one. kmacblog.ca or .com. I have a whole blog on your friend has been diagnosed with cancer. Now what? Like, what can you do to help them? And there's all these little tips, little things that you can do to help someone who's going through cancer, because we don't know what to do. We don't know what to say. But I think the best thing is not say anything, to say, you know, what it is that you feel, ask a question, um, say, how are you feeling today? How is today going? Some people really do want to talk about what they're going through, and that's as simple as it can get. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of people with cancer, because just think of it as if it was you, what would you want? Right? What would you want? You don't want your friends to scatter. You want them to come closer. you know Take care of yourself, be healthy. There's a huge link between alcohol and breast cancer. I don't know if a lot of people know that, but it's a very, very strong link. So just something to think about. um, I could tell you so much more, but we don't have that much time. But anyway, these are just little things. But yes, stay positive for one, and tell your friends. People will
Yeah.
help. People will help you.
Yeah, and I have a little bit of a personal question because I do have like a personal connection. My mom was diagnosed when I was a teenager and I was in high school and in grade 12, and just, I didn't really know how to process it. And it's a lot on a teenager, when you want to be young, you want to hang out with your friends, and it's a lot to try and deal with that too. So do you have any advice for any kids who are dealing with maybe a parent or a loved one?
That's a good question. My daughters were 20 and 13 when I was diagnosed. So I had an older one who was away at college, and she had a far more difficult time because she wasn't with me. And so when I had to tell her on the phone, which is terrible too, and she cried. The youngest was looking right at me, did not see anything wrong with me because I hadn't started treatment. I look just the same as all. And she was okay because I was like, it's going to be fine. She's looking, in my face. I was very honest with my kids. I didn't try to be fearful, but I didn't try to hide it, because I think when kids don't know what's going on, it's worse. It scares them more, right? And I think to be honest with them, but not doom and gloom, that's important. And as a kid, talk to your mom. If you're a teenager, talk to the person who has the cancer, talk to your friends about it. Don't keep it inside. That's a big thing. You'd be surprised at how good people are and how willing they are to help.
Great, great words of advice. Now coming back to you, you mentioned off the top that you had a double mastectomy, but you also opted not to have any implants put in. And why was that?
Well, I had intended to do that right out of the gate. That was a thing that I just thought everybody did, which it is, the majority of women do that. But my oncologist said, can you wait for 3 years? And I said, oh, why do you want me to wait for 3 years? He said, well, just in case your cancer returns, it's harder to detect it if you have reconstructive surgery. And in that moment, I said, well, I'm never going to do that. I am not going to take the chance of recurrence or not being able to spot it in time for the sake of my looks, for the sake of having implants. It's not worth it to me. And so, and it was that moment that I started to seek out other women like me. Do other women not do this? So I found all these Facebook pages about women who have decided to stay flat and not have reconstructive surgery. And there's this huge community and they're all there for each other. So that's the route I took.
And that's beautiful. It's a beautiful reasoning behind it. Society makes us feel like we have to look a certain way, and that's not the case. Like putting your health first is what's most important.
That's right. There's a lot more to beauty than breasts.
Exactly. And you've turned your trust into something absolutely beautiful that you just shared recently. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yes, it was perfect timing too. So for 5 years now, I've thought about getting a tattoo, a mastectomy tattoo. A friend had suggested it to me right out of the gate. It's as an alternative to reconstruction. She said, there are women who do this. I had never seen it, never heard of it, started to Google it and went, oh my gosh, this is it. This is for me. But I waited because I had scars, I had radiation. I thought, I don't know if I should be tattooing this area that has undergone so much trauma and stress. But after 5 years, I was ready to go for it. And the Breast Cancer Society of Canada just rebranded this week to call themselves Breast Cancer Canada and have launched a whole new campaign to reflect their new name. And they have used my image of my scar and my now new tattoo as part of their ad campaign to show women that are thriving post breast cancer as a result of research. So that it all kind of came together. I wanted women to see this. I wanted them to know that this was an alternative and that they would feel good and beautiful if they got it. And what a way to show it through a huge Breast Cancer Canada campaign.
Yes, that's absolutely amazing. And is there any specific inspiration behind the flowers that you decided to put on your chest?
Yes, for sure. I love sunflowers. I always have. And early on, when I was trying to pick a tattoo, and I know this because I have screenshots of sunflower tattoos and mastectomy tattoos in my phone from 2017. There's a saying that says, be the sunflower, stand strong, and follow the sun. And that's what I wanted to do all through my treatment. I said, gosh, there's a storm at my back. I need to be strong. I need to look forward to something positive, which is the sun, the end of my treatment, health in the future, and forget this storm behind me. And so that's how I think of a sunflower. They're beautiful, they're bright, and they're just the positive energy that I want to portray.
Yes, and you are a beacon of positive energy. You really and truly are. Kim, if our listeners want us more information to read your stories and to follow your journey, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Kim McDonald, the Weather Network on Facebook. I have a blog that outlines my whole journey and it's very honest, going through breast cancer, kmacblog.com. And always check out to Breast Cancer Canada's website, which is breastcancerprogress.ca.
Amazing. Kim McDonald from the Weather Network. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And trust me, you're going to want to check out her blog if you want to read more about breast cancer and just the story of a survivor.
And you can see the tattoo as well.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining me, Kim.
Thanks for having me.